Once upon a time, a man fell asleep and dreamed he was a butterfly. He floated through a warm garden, drifting from flower to flower, his wings catching the light. He felt the air beneath him. He tasted the sweetness of blossoms. He was, in every way that mattered, a butterfly. There was no memory of being a man, no sense that this was a dream, just the simple, perfect reality of being a butterfly. And then he woke up. He was a man again, lying on a mat in a room in ancient China more than 2,000 years ago. His name was Zhuangzi, and he was a philosopher, and in those first drowsy moments between sleep and waking, he asked a question that still has no answer. Was he a man who had dreamed of being a butterfly, or was he a butterfly now dreaming of being a man? It is a gentle question. There is no urgency to it. But if you sit with it long enough, it opens a door. Because what Zhuangzi was really asking is this: how do we know what is real? How much of what we call reality is simply what we have agreed to believe? Tonight, we are going to follow that question like a thread through a labyrinth. We are going to trace how a single idea, a small shift in belief, can ripple outward, quietly, gently, until it reshapes everything. The way a butterfly's wings, so the old saying goes, can stir a breeze that becomes a storm on the other side of the world. This is the butterfly effect of belief. And there is nothing you need to do with any of it. Nothing to remember, nothing to hold on to. Just let the ideas drift past you, the way clouds drift across a night sky. Let your breathing slow. Let the weight of the day begin to leave your body. Settle into wherever you are, and let the story carry you. We begin where all stories begin, in the ancient world, where the first great beliefs were born. Imagine the Nile at dawn. The river is still, flat and silver in the early light. Along its banks, reeds stand motionless in the warm air. Somewhere an ibis takes flight, its white wings catching the first gold of the sun. The smell of wet earth rises from the floodplain, rich and dark and ancient. This is Egypt, more than 4,000 years ago. And the people who live along this river believe something extraordinary. They believe that the universe has a hidden architecture, an invisible order that holds everything together. They call it Ma'at. Ma'at is truth. Ma'at is justice. Ma'at is balance. It is the reason the sun rises, the reason the river floods each year, the reason the stars follow their paths across the sky. Without Maat, the Egyptians believed, the world would dissolve into chaos, like a sand castle returning to the sea. But here is the remarkable part. Maat was not something that simply existed on its own. It had to be maintained by the pharaoh, by the priests, by ordinary people living their ordinary lives. Every truthful word spoken, every just act performed, strengthened the invisible order. Every lie, every cruelty weakened it. Think about what this means. An entire civilization, one of the greatest the world has ever known, was built on the belief that human behavior shapes the fabric of reality itself, not metaphorically, literally. The Egyptians believed that if they stopped living in accordance with Ma'at, the sun might not rise, the river might not flood, the world might end. And because they believed this, they built temples to maintain the order. They developed one of the most sophisticated legal systems of the ancient world. They created art and literature that celebrated truth and justice, not as abstract ideals, but as forces that held the universe together. The belief shaped the civilization, and the civilization, in turn, confirmed the belief. Now travel east to the land between two rivers, Mesopotamia. Here the story of creation was told differently. In the great poem called the Enuma Elish, the world was born from violence. The god Marduk slew the dragon Tiamat, and from her body he fashioned the earth and the sky. Humans were created from the blood of a defeated god, made to serve the divine powers above. This was not a gentle story, and it produced a different kind of civilization. Where the Egyptians saw cosmic order maintained by human virtue, the Mesopotamians saw a universe born from conflict, ruled by powerful and sometimes capricious gods. And so they built a world around that belief. They practiced divination obsessively, trying to read the will of the gods in the entrails of sheep, in the patterns of smoke, in the movements of stars. They saw themselves as servants of forces far greater and far more unpredictable than themselves. Two civilizations, living under the same sun, breathing the same air, looking up at the same stars, and yet inhabiting entirely different realities, not because the physical world was different, but because their beliefs about the physical world were different. And there is something else, something the Egyptians believed that is worth lingering on tonight. They believed that when a person died, their heart was weighed on a great scale. On one side of the scale, the heart; on the other, a single feather, the feather of Maat, the feather of truth. If the heart was light, if the person had lived in truth and kindness, the heart would balance with the feather, and the soul would pass into the eternal fields. But if the heart was heavy, heavy with lies, with cruelty, with all the ways a life can go wrong, the heart would sink and be devoured by a creature called Amit, part lion, part hippopotamus, part crocodile. Think of that image, a feather weighing the worth of an entire life. The Egyptians were saying something profound, that truth is not heavy, truth is light, and the accumulation of unexamined beliefs, of small deceptions, of ways we hide from ourselves, is what weighs the heart down. We may not believe in Amit, but the metaphor remains startlingly relevant. The beliefs we carry, the unexamined ones especially, have weight, they accumulate, they press down on us in ways we may not notice until we pause, as you are pausing now, and ask, what am I carrying, and does it need to be this heavy? This is the first butterfly effect of belief. The stories we tell about where we came from shape where we go. Something extraordinary happened roughly 2,500 years ago. Across the ancient world, almost simultaneously, human beings began to ask a new kind of question. In Greece, a man named Thales looked at the world around him and asked, "What is everything made of?" Not which god controls the rain, not which ritual will bring a good harvest, but what is the actual substance of reality? It sounds like a simple question, but it was revolutionary, because for the first time in recorded history, someone was looking at the world and asking not what the gods want, but what is actually there. Around the same time, in India, the authors of the Upanishads were asking similar questions. What is the nature of consciousness? What is the relationship between the self and the universe? In China, Lao Tzu was contemplating the Tao, the nameless, formless source of all things. And in Persia, Zoroaster was reimagining the divine as a cosmic struggle between light and darkness. The philosopher Karl Jaspers called this the axial age, the pivot point of human history. Across cultures that had no contact with each other, human beings simultaneously began to question the beliefs they had inherited and to imagine new ones. In Athens, this questioning reached its most dramatic form in a man named Socrates. Socrates was not what you might expect of a great philosopher. He was short. He was famously unattractive. He wore the same threadbare cloak in every season. He had no school, no books, no wealth. What he had was questions. He would approach people in the marketplace, senators, generals, craftsmen, and begin to ask them about things they thought they understood. What is justice? What is courage? What is the good life? And with patient, relentless questioning, he would show them that they did not actually know what they thought they knew, that their certainties, their beliefs, rested on foundations they had never examined. This made him very unpopular with powerful people. In the year 399 BCE, Athens put Socrates on trial. The charges were corrupting the youth and introducing strange gods. The real crime was making people uncomfortable about their beliefs. He was found guilty. He was sentenced to death by drinking hemlock. His friends begged him to escape. They had arranged everything, a boat waiting, a safe passage to another city. He refused. To run, he said, would be to betray everything he had taught. On his final evening, he sat with his friends in his prison cell. The light was fading. Someone had brought wine. And instead of grieving, instead of raging against the verdict, Socrates spent his last hours doing what he had always done, talking, thinking, asking questions about the nature of the soul, about what happens after death, about whether a philosopher should fear the end. His friend Crito wept. Others could not speak, but Socrates was calm. When the jailer brought the cup of hemlock, Socrates took it without hesitation. He drank, and then he walked around the room as he had been instructed until his legs grew heavy. He lay down. The numbness crept upward. His last words were a reminder to a friend to pay a small debt, and then he was still. Socrates died for asking questions, for suggesting that the beliefs everyone accepted without examination might be wrong. But the questions did not die with him. His student Plato preserved them and added something extraordinary of his own. Imagine, Plato said, a group of people who have lived their entire lives chained inside a dark cave. They face a wall. Behind them a fire burns. Between the fire and the prisoners, figures pass back and forth, casting shadows on the wall. The prisoners have never seen anything else. To them, the shadows are reality. They give the shadows names. They study their patterns. They build their entire understanding of the world around these flickering shapes on stone. And then one prisoner is freed. He turns around. He sees the fire. He stumbles toward the mouth of the cave and steps outside into sunlight so bright it blinds him. Slowly his eyes adjust, and he sees the real world. Trees, mountains, the sky, the sun itself. And he realizes everything he believed was real was only a shadow. This is Plato's allegory of the cave, and it is perhaps the most powerful metaphor ever created for the butterfly effect of belief. We do not see reality. We see our beliefs about reality. And until we examine those beliefs, we are prisoners who do not know they are in prison. For more than 1,000 years after Plato, the Western world believed something that seemed as obvious as the ground beneath their feet. The earth was the center of the universe. The sun rose in the east and set in the west. The stars wheeled overhead in great circles. It was perfectly clear to anyone who looked up that everything revolved around the place where they stood. And this belief was not just astronomical, it was theological. God had placed humanity at the center of creation. The earth was the stage on which the divine drama unfolded. To suggest otherwise was not just wrong, it was heresy. And then, in 1543, a Polish priest named Nicolaus Copernicus, lying on his deathbed, published a book. It was called On the Revolutions of the Celestial Spheres, and in it he proposed something that shattered the world. The earth was not the center. The earth moved. It orbited the sun like the other planets. Humanity was not the center of creation. It was just one world among many, spinning through space. Copernicus was careful. He dedicated his book to the Pope. He presented his ideas as mathematical calculations, not as claims about reality. He may not have even seen the final printed copy before he died, but the idea was out, and like a butterfly's wings stirring the air, it could not be called back. It took decades for the full impact to arrive. In the year 1600, a philosopher named Giordano Bruno was burned alive in a Roman square, in part for teaching that the universe was infinite, filled with countless worlds like our own. He was led to the stake, and when they offered him a crucifix to kiss, he turned his face away. 9 years later, a man named Galileo Galilei pointed a new instrument at the sky, a telescope, and what he saw changed everything. The moon was not a perfect sphere. It was rough and cratered like the earth. Jupiter had its own moons orbiting around it, proving that not everything revolved around the earth. Venus showed phases, just like our moon, which could only happen if it orbited the sun. Galileo published what he saw, and in 1633 the Church put him on trial. He was found guilty of heresy. He was forced to kneel and recant his beliefs, to say that the earth did not move. He spent the rest of his life under house arrest. According to legend, as he rose from his knees, he whispered 4 words, "Eppur si muove," and yet it moves. It probably never happened, but the legend survives because it captures something true. You can force a man to say he believes. You cannot force him to actually believe. And you cannot force reality to accommodate your beliefs, no matter how powerful you are. It took the Church 359 years to admit it was wrong about Galileo. In 1992, Pope John Paul II formally acknowledged the error. 359 years for a man who simply looked through a telescope and told the truth about what he saw. There is a pattern here, a pattern that repeats throughout history, and it is worth noticing because understanding it is part of understanding the butterfly effect of belief. First, the dominant belief feels so natural, so obvious, that it is invisible. Nobody argues about whether the earth is the center of the universe. It just is. The way the sky is blue, the way water is wet. The belief is not experienced as a belief at all. It is experienced as reality. Then anomalies appear, things that do not fit. The planets wander in strange loops. The mathematics does not quite work. At first, these are explained away, adjusted for, patched over with increasingly elaborate fixes, because the cost of abandoning the belief is too high. Then someone sees a new pattern, Copernicus, Galileo, and the old world resists, not because the evidence is weak, but because the old belief has become load-bearing. Pull it out, and everything built on top of it, religion, philosophy, identity, self-understanding, threatens to collapse. And finally, slowly, sometimes taking generations, the new belief replaces the old, and people wonder how anyone could ever have thought differently. The philosopher Thomas Kuhn called these moments paradigm shifts, and he made a disturbing observation. He said that science does not progress by gradually getting closer to the truth. It progresses through revolutions, in which the entire framework of understanding is overthrown and replaced. And during each revolution, the defenders of the old paradigm and the advocates of the new literally see different things when they look at the same evidence. One belief, the belief that the earth is the center, had shaped a civilization for a millennium. And when that belief changed, everything changed with it. Science, religion, philosophy, the way human beings understood their place in the cosmos. All of it reshaping itself around a new idea, like water finding new channels in the earth. On July 5th, 1687, a man named Isaac Newton published a book that many consider the most important scientific work ever written, the Principia Mathematica. In it, Newton showed that the same force that makes an apple fall from a tree keeps the moon in orbit around the earth. For the first time, the heavens and the earth were united under a single set of laws. The universe, it seemed, was a vast and beautiful machine, precise, predictable, ticking like a cosmic clock. and for more than 200 years this was the belief. The universe was a clockwork. Given enough information, you could predict everything. The future was written in the laws of physics as surely as the path of a cannonball is written in the angle of its launch. It was an enormously powerful belief. It gave us the Industrial Revolution. It gave us engineering and architecture and chemistry. It gave us the modern world. The belief that the universe was rational and predictable made it possible to build bridges and steam engines and eventually computers. And then, at the very end of the 19th century, the clockwork began to crack. On December 14th, 1900, a German physicist named Max Planck presented a paper to the Berlin Physical Society. He had been trying to solve a stubborn mathematical problem about how hot objects radiate energy, and the only way to make the numbers work was to assume something strange. Energy was not smooth and continuous, as everyone believed. It came in tiny, discrete packets, quanta. Planck himself was deeply uncomfortable with his own discovery. He spent years trying to undo it. He could not. The universe, at its smallest scale, was not smooth. It was grainy, discontinuous, strange. 5 years later, a 26-year-old patent clerk in Switzerland named Albert Einstein published 4 papers that would reshape physics. One of them showed that light itself comes in tiny packets, particles called photons. Another showed that space and time were not fixed and absolute, but flexible, relative, woven together into something called space-time. And the equation E equals mc squared revealed that matter and energy are the same thing, that the solid world around us is frozen light. But the strangest discovery was yet to come. When scientists began to study the very smallest things, electrons, photons, atoms, they found something that defied all common sense. In a famous experiment called the double-slit experiment, particles were fired one at a time through 2 narrow openings. Each particle hit a screen on the other side, leaving a tiny dot. But over time, the dots formed a pattern, an interference pattern, the kind of pattern that only waves make. Each particle, passing through the slits alone, was somehow interfering with itself, as if it passed through both slits at once, as if it existed in 2 places at the same time. And then the truly unsettling part. When scientists placed detectors at the slits to watch which slit each particle went through, the interference pattern vanished. The particles behaved like ordinary particles, going through one slit or the other, not both. The act of looking changed the result. The physicist Richard Feynman, one of the greatest minds of the 20th century, once said that the double-slit experiment contains the only mystery of quantum mechanics. If you can come to terms with it, you can come to terms with all of it, and if you cannot, you are in good company. Feynman himself admitted that nobody truly understands quantum mechanics. But here is what matters for our story tonight. At the very foundation of reality, at the level of individual particles, what you observe depends on how you observe it. The act of looking participates in creating what is seen. Niels Bohr, one of the founders of quantum physics, put it this way: physics does not tell us what nature is. Physics tells us what we can say about nature. We are back in Plato's cave. We are back with Zhuangzi's butterfly. The deepest discoveries of modern science echo the oldest intuitions of philosophy. The observer and the observed are not separate. They are woven together. They shape each other. They create each other. In 1927, a young physicist named Werner Heisenberg put this strangeness into precise mathematical form. His uncertainty principle showed that you cannot know both the exact position and the exact momentum of a particle at the same time, not because your instruments are too crude, but because at the deepest level of reality, certainty does not exist. The clockwork universe was gone. In its place was something far more mysterious, a universe where the act of observation participates in creating what is seen, where reality, at its most fundamental level, is not fixed but fluid, not determined but open. The butterflies had stirred their wings again, and the world would never be the same. Let us step back from the grand sweep of history and consider something closer to home. You carry beliefs about yourself. We all do. They are quiet things, often unexamined, running beneath the surface of consciousness like underground rivers. I am smart. I am not creative. I am good with people. I am bad with money. These beliefs feel like facts. They feel like descriptions of who we are. But they are not facts. They are stories. In the 1960s, a psychologist named Robert Rosenthal conducted a simple experiment at an elementary school in California. At the beginning of the year, he told teachers that certain students had been identified by a special test as intellectual bloomers, children who were about to experience a dramatic surge in ability. The teachers were given the names. Here is the secret. There was no special test. The children had been chosen completely at random. There was nothing unusual about them. And yet, at the end of the year, the randomly selected bloomers had actually gained significantly more than their classmates. Their IQ scores had risen. Their academic performance had improved. The gains were real and measurable. What happened? The teachers, believing these children were gifted, had treated them differently. Not dramatically, not consciously, but in 1,000 small ways. They waited a little longer for them to answer questions. They smiled at them a little more warmly. They gave them slightly more challenging work. They expected more, and in expecting more, they called forth more. The children, sensing the subtle shift in how they were perceived, rose to meet the expectation. Not because anyone told them they were special, but because the people around them behaved as though they were. A belief planted in the mind of a teacher grew into reality in the life of a child. Rosenthal called this the Pygmalion effect, after the ancient Greek sculptor who carved a statue so beautiful that the gods brought it to life. The teacher's belief became the chisel that carved the student's potential into form. The Pygmalion effect has been replicated hundreds of times since that first experiment, in classrooms and boardrooms and hospitals and sports teams. Wherever one person holds a belief about another person's potential, that belief has a quiet, persistent tendency to come true. Not through magic, through 1,000 small adjustments in behavior, in attention, in warmth, in expectation. The belief creates the environment, and the environment shapes the person. Now think about what this means in your own life. The people who believed in you, the teacher who saw something in you, the friend who expected you to succeed, the parent who never doubted. Their beliefs about you were not just opinions, they were forces, quiet forces, invisible forces, but forces that shaped who you became. And the opposite is equally true. Now consider the opposite. A child draws with abandon, purple skies, horses with 7 legs, houses that float in the air. She does not worry about whether her drawings are correct. She simply creates, with the fierce, unself-conscious certainty that what she is making is exactly right. And then, one day, someone says something, perhaps a classmate, perhaps a well-meaning adult. That doesn't look like a horse. Horses don't look like that. A small moment, not dramatic, not cruel, but a belief takes root. I can't draw. And because she believes it, her hand hesitates the next time she picks up a pencil. The doubt makes her drawing stiffer. The stiffness confirms the doubt. By the time she is 10, she has stopped drawing entirely. By the time she is 20, she will say with complete certainty, I've never been able to draw. The belief became the reality, not because it was true, but because believing it made it true. This is the butterfly effect, working at the most intimate scale. A single thought, accepted without examination, repeated over years, can close doors that were never locked. And these personal beliefs are not isolated, they ripple outward. A teacher who believes she cannot inspire teaches with less passion. Her students learn less. They grow up with a dimmer sense of what is possible. They become teachers, parents, managers, who pass their dimmer sense of possibility on to others. One quiet belief in one quiet person, echoing through generations. But the opposite is equally true, and this is the hopeful part. A single person who believes something different, who sees possibility where others see limits, can start a ripple in the other direction. A teacher who truly believes in a student's potential can set off a chain of events that transforms a life. A parent who says, "I believe in you," and means it, can undo years of quiet doubt. We underestimate the power of these small moments. We think that changing the world requires grand gestures, revolutions, movements. But the butterfly effect teaches us otherwise. The smallest shift in the quietest place can be the beginning of something enormous. There is a moment in a hospital in Houston, Texas, that reveals something astonishing about the power of belief. In the year 2002, a surgeon named Bruce Moseley published the results of an experiment in the New England Journal of Medicine. He had been treating patients with painful arthritic knees, the kind of chronic, grinding pain that makes every step difficult. The standard treatment was arthroscopic surgery, a procedure where the surgeon inserts tiny instruments through small incisions and cleans out the damaged joint. But Moseley wanted to know, was it the surgery that helped, or was it something else? He divided his patients into 3 groups. One group received the real surgery. A second group received a partial procedure, rinsing the joint but not scraping it. And a third group received nothing. Moseley made small incisions in their skin. He splashed saline water around. He made the sounds of surgery. He let them hear the instruments, but he did nothing to the joint itself. The patients did not know which group they were in. They all believed they had received real surgery. And the results were remarkable. 2 years later, all 3 groups showed the same improvement. The patients who received fake surgery reported the same reduction in pain, the same increase in mobility as the patients who received real surgery. The belief that they had been treated was the treatment. This is the placebo effect, and it is one of the most thoroughly documented phenomena in all of medicine. It has been observed in pain treatment, in depression, in Parkinson's disease, in irritable bowel syndrome. Brain imaging studies have shown that when a patient believes they have received medication, their brain actually releases the chemicals associated with that medication. The belief does not just change how they feel, it changes their brain chemistry. Think about what this means for our story. For thousands of years, philosophers have argued that belief shapes reality. The Stoics said it. The Buddhists said it. Plato suggested it with his cave. But the placebo effect proves it. Under controlled conditions, with brain scans and blood tests, belief reaches into the body and changes it. There is even a phenomenon called the nocebo effect, where belief works in the opposite direction. If a patient is told that a medication has side effects, they are more likely to experience those side effects, even if the pill contains nothing at all. The belief in harm creates harm. We are not passive observers of reality. We are participants. What we believe about our health, about our abilities, about what is possible, reaches into the physical world and reshapes it, not through magic, through biology, through the intricate dance between mind and body, expectation and experience, belief and being. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus, born a slave in 1st century Rome, understood this 2,000 years before brain imaging made it visible. "It is not things that disturb us," he wrote, "but our judgments about things. The pain is real, but the story we tell ourselves about the pain, the belief about what it means, shapes our experience of it far more than the pain itself." Modern cognitive behavioral therapy, the most widely practiced and thoroughly tested psychotherapy in the world, is built on exactly this principle. Its founder, Aaron Beck, noticed that his patients were not simply reacting to events, they were reacting to their beliefs about events. A patient who believed, "I am worthless," experienced the world as hostile and uncaring, not because it was, but because that belief filtered out all evidence to the contrary. Change the belief, Beck showed, and you change the experience, not the event itself, but the reality the person lives inside. 2,000 years from Epictetus to Beck, from Roman slave to Pennsylvania psychiatrist, and the same quiet truth running through both, like an underground river surfacing in different places. Your beliefs are not descriptions of reality. They are lenses through which you see reality, and you can change the lens. Consider, for a moment, the piece of paper in your wallet, or the number on your phone that represents your bank balance. What is it? If you examine a banknote carefully, you will see that it is a piece of cotton and linen with ink printed on it. It has no nutritional value. You cannot plant it. You cannot build shelter with it. As a physical object, it is nearly worthless.
And yet, with this piece of paper, you can buy a meal, you can rent a room, you can purchase a ticket to the other side of the world. You can convince a complete stranger to spend hours of their life working for you. How is this possible? It is possible because of belief, specifically because of a shared belief, a collective agreement among billions of people that this particular arrangement of cotton and ink has value, not because of anything intrinsic to the paper, but because everyone around you also believes it has value, and everyone around them, stretching out across the entire globe. Money, at its root, is an act of collective imagination. It works because we all agree to believe in it. And the moment that agreement falters, the magic disappears. The paper becomes paper again. This is what happened during the bank runs of the Great Depression. A bank is a building made of belief. It holds deposits from thousands of people, but it does not keep all that money in a vault. It lends most of it out. This works perfectly well, as long as everyone believes it will keep working. But when fear spreads, when enough people believe the bank will fail, they rush to withdraw their money. And because the bank cannot give everyone their money at once, the belief that it will fail causes it to fail. A false belief becomes a true outcome. Franklin Roosevelt understood this when he said in his first inaugural address that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. He was not offering empty reassurance. He was making a precise observation about the mechanics of belief. Nations work the same way. A nation is not a physical object. You cannot touch it or hold it. It is an idea, a shared story that millions of people agree to believe. The borders exist because people believe in them. The laws apply because people believe they apply. The flag has meaning because people have agreed that it has meaning. This is not a reason to be cynical. It is a reason to be amazed. We are a species that creates reality through shared belief. A collective act of imagination can feed a city, build a civilization, or send a spacecraft to the edge of the solar system. Think of all the things that exist only because enough people believe in them. Corporations, universities, human rights, the weekend. These are not natural phenomena. You will not find them in a forest or a river. They exist because human beings imagined them, agreed to believe in them, and then acted as though they were real. And through that acting, they became real. The historian Yuval Noah Harari has pointed out that this capacity for shared belief is perhaps the defining feature of our species. Other animals can communicate. Some can use tools. But no other creature on earth can get millions of strangers to cooperate based on a shared story. A shared fiction that becomes, through collective belief, a shared reality. There may be no greater testament to the power of belief than the simple, extraordinary fact that a piece of paper can buy you dinner.
And yet, this same power has a shadow. Because shared beliefs can create, they can also destroy. When collective fear takes hold, when enough people believe that something is failing, their belief can make it fail. Economies can contract because enough people believe they will contract. Societies can fracture because enough people believe they are fracturing. This is why the stories a culture tells about itself matter so much. Not because stories are pleasant entertainment, but because stories are the seeds of shared belief, and shared belief, as we have seen, becomes shared reality. The stories you tell yourself matter too. The quiet narrative that runs beneath your day, the beliefs about who you are and what you deserve and what is possible, these are not just thoughts, they are the architecture of your experience. And just as the Egyptians believed their behavior held the cosmos together, your inner narratives shape the world you inhabit far more than you might realize. Let us return to the ancient world, to a different shore. In China, perhaps 3 centuries before the Common Era, a philosopher we know as Lao Tzu wrote a small book of 81 verses. It is called the Tao Te Ching, and it may be the most profound meditation on belief and reality ever composed. The very first line sets the tone. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. In other words, the deepest truth about reality cannot be captured in words or concepts or beliefs. The moment you name it, you have already moved away from it. Reality is always larger, always more mysterious than any belief we hold about it. This is not a failure of human understanding. It is an invitation to hold our beliefs lightly, to remain curious, to remember that every map is smaller than the territory it describes. Lao Tzu used a beautiful image. He compared the useful part of a bowl to the empty space inside it. We think the bowl is the clay, but what makes it useful is the emptiness, the space where nothing is. In the same way, Lao Tzu suggested it is not what we know that makes us wise. It is our willingness to not know, our ability to remain open, empty, available to reality as it actually is, rather than as our beliefs insist it should be. Half a world away, and around the same time, the Buddha was teaching something remarkably similar. In the Dhammapada, one of the oldest Buddhist texts, the opening verse declares, "With our thoughts we make the world." Not discover the world, not describe the world, make it.
The mind, according to this ancient teaching, is not a camera that passively records reality. It is a painter that actively creates it. Every perception is shaped by expectation. Every experience is colored by belief. And here is where the Buddhist teaching adds something powerful. If the world we experience is made by our thoughts, then by changing our thoughts, we can change the world we experience. Not the physical world out there, but the lived, felt, experienced world in here.
This is the foundation of meditation. Not an escape from reality, but a deeper engagement with it. By sitting still, by watching thoughts arise and pass away, the meditator begins to see something remarkable. The thoughts are not reality, they are weather. They come and go like clouds crossing an empty sky, and behind them, vast and still and untouched by any storm, is something the Buddhists call awareness, something that was there before the first thought and will be there after the last. In India, the great philosopher Shankara used a vivid image to describe how belief creates our experience of reality. Imagine, he said, that you are walking down a dark path at night. You see a shape on the ground ahead of you. Your heart pounds. A snake. You freeze. Fear floods your body. And then someone brings a lantern, and you see that it is not a snake at all. It is a coiled rope. The fear was real. The physical response was real. But the snake was never there. It existed only in belief. And when the belief changed, the snake vanished. It was never destroyed. It was simply seen through.
This is what Shankara called Maya, the veil of illusion. Not that the world is fake, but that our beliefs about the world add a layer of interpretation that we mistake for the world itself. The rope was real, the path was real, but the snake, the fear, the story about danger, that was all added by the mind. How much of your life, right now, is rope that you have mistaken for a snake? How many of your fears, your worries, your anxieties are responses not to reality, but to a story about reality? The thought is not alarming, it is freeing, because if the snake was never there, then the danger was never there, and the fear can simply dissolve. There is a verse in the Heart Sutra, one of the most important texts in the Buddhist tradition, that says, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." This sounds paradoxical, but what it means is beautifully simple. The things we perceive are not as solid as they seem, and the space we think is empty is not as empty as we think. Reality is more fluid, more open, more alive with possibility than our ordinary beliefs allow us to see. The Buddhist meditator, sitting in silence, is not trying to escape reality. They are trying to see it more clearly, to look past the beliefs, the stories, the accumulated interpretations, and to see what is actually there. And what they find, again and again, is that behind the busy surface of thought there is something vast and still, something that was there before the first belief, and will be there after the last one dissolves. There are moments in history when belief does not just shape perception, it shapes the physical world. On the 8th day of the 8th month of the year 2008, at exactly 8 minutes and 8 seconds past 8 o'clock in the evening, the opening ceremony of the Beijing Olympics began. This was not a coincidence. In Chinese culture, the number 8 holds extraordinary power. The word for 8 in Mandarin sounds similar to the word meaning to prosper. Because of this connection, 8 has become the luckiest number in Chinese culture. Phone numbers with 8s sell for premium prices. Wedding dates are chosen for their 8s. Business deals are closed on auspicious dates. And so, when China hosted the world for the Olympics, they wove this belief into the fabric of the event, the date, the time, down to the second. On that day, thousands of couples in Beijing chose to marry, believing the cascade of 8s would bless their unions. Now consider the opposite. Across much of East Asia, the number 4 carries a very different weight. In Japanese, Chinese, and Korean, the word for 4 sounds nearly identical to the word for death.
This is not a minor superstition. It is a belief so deeply held that it reshapes architecture itself. Hospitals in Japan often have no 4th floor. The elevator panel skips from 3 to 5, as though the 4th floor does not exist. In some buildings, any floor containing a 4, 14, 24, 40 through 49, is omitted entirely. A belief about a number, a sound, a linguistic association has caused entire floors to vanish from buildings. It has reshaped the architecture of cities. The belief does not just exist in people's minds, it exists in concrete and steel and elevator buttons. And if you think this is only an Eastern phenomenon, consider the number 13 in Western culture. Hotels and office buildings in America and Europe often skip the 13th floor. The elevator goes from 12 to 14. Airlines sometimes have no 13th row. Hospitals avoid room 13. The fear of 13 is so common it has its own clinical name, triskaidekaphobia. In both cases, East and West, a belief about a number has physically altered the built environment. The buildings are different shapes because of what people believe. The rooms are numbered differently. The floors are arranged differently. Belief has literally changed the geometry of the spaces we inhabit. This is the butterfly effect at its most tangible. You can stand in an elevator in Tokyo
or New York or London and see with your own eyes the places where belief has edited reality. Or consider the sacred groves of Japan. For more than 1,000 years, certain clearings in the forest have been considered inhabited by kami, spirits of the natural world. Because of this belief, the trees have not been cut, the stones have not been disturbed, the spaces have been treated with reverence. And over time, something remarkable has happened. The trees in these sacred groves are older and larger than those in the surrounding forest. The biodiversity is richer. The silence is deeper. A visitor who knows nothing about the kami will still feel something different when they step into the clearing. The quality of the air, the density of the forest, the age of the trees. These are real, measurable, physical differences, and they exist because of a belief. The belief did not create the trees, but it created the conditions in which the trees could flourish. It built a protective boundary, not with fences or walls, but with reverence, and over time the place became worthy of the reverence that had been given to it. There is a story from ancient China that captures something essential about the butterfly effect of belief. It is the story of the Taoist farmer. A farmer's horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him. Such bad luck, they said. The farmer smiled gently and said, "We shall see." The next day the horse returned and brought with it 2 wild horses. His neighbors came to congratulate him. Such good luck, they said. The farmer smiled and said, "We shall see." The following day, the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses. He was thrown and broke his leg. The neighbors came to offer their sympathy. Such bad luck, they said. The farmer said, "We shall see." The next week, the army came through the village, conscripting young men for war. Because of his broken leg, the farmer's son was passed over. Such good luck, the neighbors said. The farmer said, "We shall see." The story could go on forever, and that is the point. Our beliefs about whether something is good or bad, lucky or unlucky, are always premature. Reality is always larger than our judgment of it. The farmer knew something his neighbors did not. He knew that the meaning of an event is not fixed. It changes as the story unfolds, and the story is never finished. There is another story from the same tradition. Zhuangzi told it, and it is about a boat. Imagine you are in a small boat on a river. You are peaceful. The water is calm. The banks are green. And then another boat comes drifting toward you. It bumps into your boat, and you look up, annoyed. Who is this careless person? But then you see the other boat is empty. It drifted loose from its mooring. There is no one in it. And in that instant your anger vanishes. There is nothing to be angry at. The boat is empty. Zhuangzi's point is simple and devastating. The anger was never about the boat. It was about the story you told yourself about the boat. When you believed someone was in it, someone careless, someone inconsiderate, anger arose. When you saw the boat was empty, the anger disappeared. The bump was exactly the same. The boat was exactly the same. Only the belief changed. And if this is true of boats, is it not also true of everything that angers us? Every frustration, every resentment, every grievance? What if, in every case, the boat is empty? What if the stories we tell ourselves about why things happen, the beliefs about intention and meaning and blame, are adding something that was never there?
This does not mean that nothing matters. It means that our beliefs about what matters shape our experience far more than the events themselves. There is a related idea in the Buddhist tradition, a teaching about a raft. The Buddha said that his teachings are like a raft that carries you across a river. When you reach the other shore, you do not strap the raft to your back and carry it with you. You leave it behind. It served its purpose. Beliefs are like this. They carry us for a while. They help us make sense of the world. They give us something to hold on to. But there comes a time when the belief has done its work, and clinging to it only weighs us down. The Taoist farmer knew this. He did not cling to any interpretation of events. He let each moment arrive, and he let it go, not because he did not care, but because he understood that reality is always richer than any belief about it, always more surprising, always more generous.
And the empty boat. The empty boat is perhaps the most useful teaching of all, because most of the time the boat is empty. Most of the time, the things that upset us are not malicious. They are just things that happened. The rain does not fall on your picnic out of spite. Traffic does not slow down to frustrate you. The person who cut in front of you at the store was probably not even aware you were there. The boat is empty, and when you see that, really see it, a great weight lifts. The anger dissolves, the resentment releases, and in its place there is just this moment, this breath, this quiet night. Let that thought settle now, like a leaf drifting down to rest on still water. There is no need to grasp it, no need to agree or disagree. Just let it be there, alongside you, as the night deepens.
On the 6th of May, 1954, a 25-year-old British medical student named Roger Bannister stepped onto a running track at Oxford. The wind was strong. The conditions were far from ideal.
But Bannister had prepared himself, not just physically, but mentally. He had studied the problem with a scientist's precision. He had rehearsed the race in his mind hundreds of times, and crucially, he believed it was possible. For as long as anyone had kept records, no human being had run a mile in under 4 minutes. Experts had declared it impossible. Some suggested the human body would break apart under the strain. The 4-minute barrier had stood for so long that it had become more than a physical limit. It had become a belief, a shared agreement about what was possible. When Bannister crossed the finish line, the time was 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. The barrier had fallen. But here is what makes this story truly extraordinary. It is not what happened that day, but what happened afterward. Within 46 days, another runner also broke 4 minutes. Within a year, several more had done it. Within a decade, it had become almost routine.
The human body did not suddenly evolve in 1954. Legs and hearts and lungs did not change. What changed was a belief. One person demonstrated that the barrier was not real, and once that belief dissolved, it dissolved for everyone. The 4-minute mile was never a physical limit. It was a collective agreement about what was possible, and one person's act of belief shattered that agreement forever. Now, there is something worth noticing here. The people who broke 4 minutes after Bannister did not need to be convinced by an argument. They did not read a book that changed their mind. They simply saw that it had been done, and something inside them shifted. The belief that it was impossible quietly let go of them, and in its absence they discovered abilities they had always possessed. This is how many of our beliefs work. We do not choose them consciously. They settle over us like mist, absorbed from the people around us, from the culture we grow up in, from the 1,000 small messages of daily life. And they constrain us, not because they are true, but because we do not notice they are there. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who was born a slave in ancient Rome, understood this with perfect clarity. "It is not things that disturb us," he wrote, "but our judgments about things."
Not the event, the belief about the event. Not what happens, but what we tell ourselves about what happens. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who studied Epictetus's teachings, wrote in his private journal, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." He was not offering motivational advice. He was describing, with philosophical precision, the mechanism by which belief shapes experience. The world sends us events.
Our beliefs interpret those events, and it is the interpretation, not the event, that we actually live inside. Marcus Aurelius wrote these words to himself. They were never meant to be published. He called the journal simply "To Myself," and in those private pages, written late at night by candlelight, in military camps and palace rooms, the most powerful man in the world reminded himself again and again that the quality of his inner life depended not on his circumstances, but on his beliefs about his circumstances. "Choose not to be harmed," he wrote, "and you will not feel harmed. Do not feel harmed, and you have not been."
This is not denial. It is not pretending that difficult things are easy. It is something subtler. It is the recognition that between any event and your experience of that event, there is a space, and in that space lives your belief about what the event means. And that belief is something you have more influence over than you might think. The Stoics called this the inner citadel, the place inside you that no external circumstance can touch, not because you are numb, not because you do not care, but because you understand with the clarity of long practice that your beliefs are the architects of your experience, and you can choose, not always easily, but always in principle, what to believe. We have traveled a long way tonight. From the banks of the Nile, where the Egyptians believed their behavior held the universe together, to the caves of Plato, where shadows passed for reality, through the revolutionary sky of Copernicus and Galileo, where the earth was stripped of its place at the center, into the strange and shimmering world of quantum physics, where the act of observation participates in creating what is observed. From Zhuangzi's butterfly dream to Shankara's rope and snake, from the Taoist farmer's quiet wisdom to the placebo effect's astonishing proof that belief changes biology, from the money in your wallet to the missing fourth floors in Japanese hospitals, from the teachers whose beliefs transformed children to the runner whose belief shattered an impossible barrier. And through it all, a single thread. The thread is this: we do not passively receive reality, we participate in creating it, not through magic or wish-thinking, but through the intimate, continuous, inescapable relationship between what we believe and what we experience. The philosopher Thomas Kuhn showed that even scientists, the people we trust most to see reality clearly, operate within belief systems he called paradigms. And when the paradigm shifts,
They literally see different things when they look at the same evidence. The same sky that told Ptolemy the earth was the center told Copernicus the earth was moving. The same data, different beliefs, different realities. The sociologist Robert Merton showed that false beliefs can create true outcomes. A bank that is perfectly healthy can be destroyed by the belief that it will fail. A child who is perfectly ordinary can become extraordinary because a teacher believes in them. The belief becomes the fact. And the quantum physicists, those explorers of the very smallest and most fundamental level of reality, discovered something that would have astonished the ancients and the moderns alike. At the deepest level, reality is not fixed, it is not determined. The universe holds itself in a state of possibility until the moment of observation, when possibility collapses into actuality. We are not spectators of a finished world. We are participants in an unfinished one.
And here is something beautiful about that. If reality is not fixed, if it is shaped by how we see and what we believe, then it is never too late to change the story. The child who was told she could not draw can pick up a pencil. The person who learned to see the world as hostile can learn to see it differently. The society that has organized itself around a false belief can find a truer one. Max Planck, the man who accidentally discovered quantum physics, made a wry observation near the end of his life. He said that a new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents. It triumphs because its opponents eventually die, and a new generation grows up with the new idea. He was talking about science, but he might have been talking about any belief. Every generation inherits a set of beliefs from the one before. Some of those beliefs are true, some are shadows on the cave wall, and the great work of each generation, the quiet, ongoing, never-finished work, is to sort the true from the inherited, to examine what has been handed down, and to ask, as Socrates asked, "Do I actually know this, or do I merely believe it?" This is not a call to believe harder, or to try to manifest things through willpower. It is something gentler than that. It is an invitation to notice, to pay attention to the beliefs you carry, especially the quiet ones, the ones that feel like facts rather than choices. To ask yourself, as Socrates asked the citizens of Athens, do I actually know what I think I know? Because the beautiful truth, the truth that connects Zhuangzi to Einstein, Plato to Rosenthal, the Tao Te Ching to cognitive therapy, is this: when you change the way you see, what you see changes. And now, as the night grows deeper,
and the ideas settle like fallen leaves around you, there is one last thought to carry with you into sleep. It comes from the strangest and most beautiful discovery of modern physics. Werner Heisenberg showed in 1927 that at the very foundation of reality, certainty does not exist. You cannot know both where a particle is and where it is going, not because your instruments are limited, but because, at the deepest level, the universe itself has not decided yet. Before measurement, before observation, a particle does not have a definite position. It exists as a cloud of probabilities, a soft blur of what might be. It is only when someone looks, when consciousness engages with matter, that the blur sharpens into a point, that possibility becomes actual. The universe, at its most fundamental level, is comfortable with not knowing. And perhaps, as you lie here now, letting the weight of the day dissolve, letting your thoughts slow and soften, you can find something reassuring in this. You do not need to have everything figured out. You do not need to know the answers. The universe itself, the atoms in your pillow, the photons of starlight passing through your window, exist in a gentle state of possibility. They are not anxious about it. They are not striving for certainty. They simply are. Zhuangzi dreamed he was a butterfly, and when he woke, he could not be sure which was the dream and which was real. But notice, he did not say this with alarm. He said it with wonder. The not knowing was not a problem to be solved. It was a mystery to be appreciated. And Lao Tzu, in his small ancient book, wrote that to know you do not know is the highest attainment, not because ignorance is a virtue, but because the willingness to not know keeps you open, available, alive to the endlessly unfolding mystery of being here, in this body, on this earth, under these stars. You have carried beliefs with you your entire life. Some were given to you as a child. Some you chose. Some chose you. And like the prisoners in Plato's cave, you have probably mistaken some of your beliefs for reality itself. But tonight, you do not need to sort them out. You do not need to decide which beliefs are shadows and which are real. You can simply notice, with a quiet, drowsy curiosity, that you have beliefs at all, that the world you experience is shaped, in ways large and small, by the thoughts you carry. And if the thoughts that come to you now, as sleep approaches, are gentle ones, let them stay. And if they are not gentle, let them drift past, like empty boats on a quiet river. The butterfly effect of belief tells us that small things matter, that a single thought, a single shift in perspective can ripple outward in ways we cannot predict. But tonight the ripples are slowing, the water is growing still, the butterflies have folded their wings. And you, like Zhuangzi, are somewhere between dreaming and waking, between the man and the butterfly, between the known and the beautifully unknown. The atoms in your body were forged in the hearts of ancient stars. They have been many things before they were you. Stardust, seawater, stone. The calcium in your bones was once part of a star that exploded billions of years ago, scattering itself across the darkness, so that one day, impossibly far in the future, it could become a hand that holds a book, or rests on a pillow, or reaches out to touch someone you love. You are the universe experiencing itself, believing things about itself, dreaming about itself. And tonight you are drifting into sleep, the way Zhuangzi drifted into a butterfly, the way starlight drifts through the window, the way a river drifts toward the sea.
Rest now. Let the mystery hold you. The universe has been comfortable with not knowing for 14 billion years. You can be comfortable with it for one quiet night. Good night. The night is quiet now. The ideas have settled like dust after a long journey, and you are still here, breathing, resting, present. The night continues. The story we have followed tonight, from the Nile to the quantum, from the cave to the butterfly, is still unfolding. It has been unfolding since the first human looked up at the stars and asked, "What is this?" It will continue unfolding long after this night is over. And you are part of it. Every belief you hold, every thought that drifts through your mind, is a butterfly's wing stirring the air in ways you may never see. But for now, for this moment, there is nothing to stir, nothing to change, nothing to believe in or question or understand. Just the soft weight of your body, the slow rhythm of your breath, and the vast, quiet dark holding you the way the sky holds the stars. Sleep well.